So last week I made a video talking about AUSL, the Athletes Unlimited Softball League, and where I think they should expand to. Well, here's the thing. We have two professional sports leagues that are currently expanding. Well, one is expanding by the 2028 season, and then you have the NHL, which is very much looking into expansion, even though they just expanded in 2022 and have 32 teams currently. So we should talk about this NHL expansion, which would bring them to 34 teams, unless they want to do it one at a time. So 33. The plan I've heard isn't to stop at 34; it's to get to 36 and relatively quickly. I enjoy a Broody Brazil video from time to time. He talked about it. That was his prediction, not off of sources, but I've seen people talking about they have 4 cities they're looking at, and it's not a competition between those 4. They want all 4 of them. I'm a little iffy on one of those, but I'm going to get into that. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, all that normal YouTube stuff. So yeah, let's get into this. First off, we have to mention, the ginormous elephant in the room. It's larger than the room even. NHL wants Atlanta for the 3rd time. Will it work? Who knows? I'm not exactly sure why hockey has never been able to, stick in Atlanta. I think it's just kind of like you look at where hockey is big culturally, and it's Canada and northeastern US. Like, you got, Minnesota's not that east. Neither is Chicago, really, but you got Minnesota, you got Wisconsin, you have the Great Lakes region. So the Great Lakes, that's where American hockey players come from for the most part. There's some other places, but that is the region where hockey is popular, whether playing at the youth level or just watching the game at the professional level. Atlanta, they've tried twice. That's why we have, is it the current Jets, and then I know the Calgary Flames, because the Atlanta Flames and then the Atlanta Thrashers, and I think the Thrashers became the new Jets or the new Senators. I hate relocation of teams. NHL has done it a lot. So it gets honestly really confusing what goes where and what came from where and all that stuff. Now, things have changed a lot since, Atlanta's other 2 teams. We've seen, just in the 2020s, 4 Stanley Cups, 1 in the South, just in Florida, really. The Dallas Stars do pretty well in Texas, of all places. Arizona Coyotes, it's not really their fault. Not really. It's Southwest. It's not really Southern. Texas is its own thing. Florida is Southern. The Hurricanes, they just won the Stanley Cup. The Hurricanes have fans. They have pretty good fans, actually. Now, I'm not saying Atlanta won't work the 3rd time. I think the foundation is definitely laid for it to be easier to get into for Atlanta, because we're seeing hockey as a whole globally grow. It's just the question of whether or not, like, a truly southern city would want it, because, like, Florida's the South, but Miami and Tampa, that's not, your deep South type of vibes. And like North Carolina, they're in Raleigh, right? Yeah, Raleigh. Like, it's the South, but it's just different culturally than, like, Georgia as a whole, or Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee even. Like, I don't know if hockey is going to work professionally there, but we're getting to the point where it could. I don't think Atlanta should get Team 33. Maybe they get Team 34. I don't think they should go to Atlanta first with this expansion wave. So, next up is NHL has found an ownership group in Houston. Now, here is where I've seen conflicting reports because of this. So if NHL wants to get to 36 teams relatively quickly, people have said Houston and the more honestly likely Austin, Texas. The Houston ownership group mentioned to NHL that they might actually prefer Austin as a market, and it's a bit odd, but I like it. Austin really doesn't have teams. You know, they have an MLS team, they have an AUSL team, they don't have NBA, they don't have NFL, they don't have MLB. So NHL could fit there as the only representative of the big four, and then you also have professional softball and professional soccer there. So we're building up Austin as a sports city. I think that is smart on, that ownership group's end, because NHL, you have to compete with, not really compete with, you're on off nights with NBA, but it's the same time of year. It's the same time of year as football. So Houston, you have the Texans and you have the Rockets that are already established brands in Houston playing at the same time as you. And then later on in the year, the Astros come back. So, Houston has a lot going on, whereas Austin really doesn't during that time of year. So giving fans a potential NHL franchise to support could be a kind of good idea. Something interesting to see. I think Austin might be the better market. Due to that, there's just less there, and there's still a big population in Austin. It's not too far from San Antonio, I don't think. So I think Austin, Texas is a likely location for NHL. So between Atlanta and Austin, I would say do Austin first, see how that expansion goes, give it a couple years, and then bring in Atlanta to see if it works. Before I get to, the what would be 35th and 36th team in NHL, I just have to mention there's just not enough goalies. There isn't. So we're going to see this massive explosion in scoring, which we're already seeing. And these teams will genuinely be terrible. The Kraken are not good. The Golden Knights were extremely lucky, and there's a lot going into that. But when they were created, they were good. There's a lot that went into that. And I think part of that was, their ownership group. And I think NHL really wanted the new team to be good. And we're seeing some of the dynasty-ridden parts of the NHL kind of crumbling at the end of the 2010s. A little bit. So, they were just weakening. We're not really seeing that now. The Panthers got better. I don't think the Lightning are, super done. The Avalanche are there. There are some stacked teams in NHL. And I don't think they're ready to dismantle them yet. So there are some sports leagues that are ready for expansion and could get, 4 more teams right now, today. And those are, I would say AUSL, but that's easy for them. That would bring them to 10 teams. Okay, that's not too bad. There's a lot of college softball talent coming up. Okay, so that's fine. NBA, those rosters are small. There's a lot of great players internationally and here in the States. So you could do that. As a whole, a lot of teams would get worse. And I think, the expansion draft, they would have to be able to protect less people than they have in the past. But, NBA could jump up to 34 teams and be fine due to smaller rosters, international popularity of the sport, and domestic popularity of the sport. They could do it. Same with MLB. Large rosters, but then, you're searching for more talent in the MPB. You're searching for more talent in KBO. There are places they can find players, because MLB will always find new players. The problem starts to be searching for farm teams and finding talent there. which NHL also runs into that issue. So, whenever you add a team, you're really adding 3 in NHL because they get 1 to 2 affiliates. But just from adding 2 more teams to NHL, we need 4 more starting caliber goalies. And then you need, 8? Yeah, 8 lower level goalies probably, which is a lot because it's just a super specialized skill to be a hockey goalie. And part of that is because, one, hockey is just an expensive sport. Here in the US, it's just unaffordable for a lot of people that might want to try it. Like, youth hockey in Chicago is big, but, for as wealthy of a city Chicago technically is, and how much money is in the area, there's a lot of people in the area that will not play youth hockey. And their kids will not play youth hockey because they're just priced out of it. And it's just like, I think the NHL would benefit more monetarily and, longevity wise by actually just helping fund more youth programs across, especially the United States. Canada too, definitely. Because these are how you get new players into the game. And I think specifically with Chicago, we're going to see more Chicago-born and Chicago area players in the future, don't get me wrong. I mean, the Blackhawks dynasty was the early 2010s, we're the mid-2020s. So a kid born in 2010, when they won that first Stanley Cup of those 3, that kid is 16 now. So give it a few years and we'll probably see some Chicago-born players in the NHL, more. But there's a lot of people who were rooting for the Blackhawks during the dynasty who couldn't play youth hockey because it is just too expensive. And that brings us back to there's not enough goalies because, yeah, being a skater is expensive. It's just prohibitively expensive for most families. But goalie equipment is even more expensive. And not only that, at the youth level, you can't wear it your first and second year. You have to get a new set because, the thing about youth sports programs is these are kids and they are growing. And goalie equipment that is too small for you isn't going to protect you the way you need it to when you're between the posts. It's not going to work. So I think NHL needs to calm down about expansion. Sure, add Austin, try Atlanta again. If Atlanta doesn't work, maybe throw them in Hamilton. I don't know. But what you need to do is invest in youth hockey. And I think NHL already does, but more and more, not just doing training camps with kids that can already play hockey. I mean, helping pay for families to be able to afford, especially goalie equipment. Go to schools, help fund their programs. Less of this pay to play in youth sport. I think it's genuinely ruining youth sports and by extension professional sports because look at the NBA. The NBA used to be full of actual real people that grew up with all kinds of different experiences in life. And now we're getting more and more of it's daddy's money league. Okay. You're just seeing people that went to high schools that genuinely are basically professional training academies for athletes, which is ridiculous. Okay. The whole point of it is to be a school, and then we offer sports that you can play. That should be it. But we've just expanded past that with youth sports, and it's gotten ridiculous. So a lot of poor families, no matter how talented the kid is or anything, no matter how dedicated they are, they're not going to get the looks because their family isn't spending thousands of dollars a year in tuition to a high school for their kid to get noticed by colleges and by extension professional leagues. It's ridiculous. Pay to play is awful. It's evil. And I think NHL needs to calm down about adding 4 teams. Add 2 over the next 10 years, whatever. Focus on growing the game, not just in viewers, in players. That's what you need to do. Hockey has a very big problem. It is not affordable for most families, and especially with prices going up. Okay, if you get more kids into hockey, those kids will grow up loving hockey and either continue to play it at a collegiate or professional level, or they just watch it and they, teach their kids to love the game too. That's what you're building, the longevity. You're building the future. And that could help you expand into the South, because that's part of the problem in the South is there just isn't a ground base of hockey love. It just isn't there yet. And I think it's growing, but you can't just have hockey be the spectacle to watch if you don't have new players coming up. And you can't keep growing the NHL if you don't have more players coming up, especially goalies. Like, we need to be serious about the goalie issue in the NHL. Yeah, it's kind of cool that there's more scoring, but if we add 4 more teams without taking those measures to make sure that we have more goalies growing up and into, higher levels of play, what's the point? Anyways, that's just my thoughts. It's always fun to talk about sports leagues expanding and all that. But the one that really, really shouldn't right now is NHL. They've added 2 more teams in the past 10 years, and they're talking about adding 4 more. Let's cool off a little bit, okay? Let's grow the sport at the youth level before we expand too much, get more people into the game. That's just my thoughts. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.